Now remember what we have discussed. We've discussed the 6th reason why strategy fail. First reason is what? The first reason is people do not have a clear agreement on who the strategic customer is and what is the value proposition. So the first one is, what is our value proposition? Is it price? Is it product? Is it product plus? You as a leader, as a founder of your company, you need to specify what is this value proposition. This is your first role. What?
The same company is having different strategies.
They could, but then what you do is you have different people who come up with different, which is fine. We have seen, but then make sure that you have the company have a clarity in terms of this.
So that means you have 2 strategies for your
That means that you would have to, for instance, in the case of HP, you had different organization. We wouldn't talk to each other. Sometimes we'll even, we'll say, look, these are the people from the PC division. So it is haram alayhun. It is where so it's really completely different silos. And the more separated they are, the better it is, because you don't want to overlap too much. The only overlap was what at the board meeting when you had to share in terms of resources and you do. The second reason, remember the first one is what are we offering to our customer. The second reason is people feel a disconnect between what is being asked of them and the way we do things around here. The way we do things is the culture. If there is no alignment between your strategy and your culture, your strategy will fail. If there is no alignment between your customer value proposition and your strategy would fail. So this is, people do not fully understand the strategy, do not see how their role is connected to it. Clarify the strategy. Most importantly, clarify the role that they have to do in implementing the strategy. All of these is your responsibility as a leader in your team. Even if you have 3 people or 4 people, you need to specify this. The fourth one, people do not feel or able or willing to take initiative to support the strategy. This is provide them with the tools, provide them with the skills, provide them with the know-how. And this is your role again to do this. So clearly identify and agree on the customer value proposition. Your role. Identify the disconnect and between to reshape the culture. Your role. Communicate the strategy better in order to get strategy commitment and alignment. Enable and motivate people with appropriate leadership behavior. Performance evaluation and reward system. Reward wrong behaviors and even punish this hard behavior. So if your compensation scheme is not here to support your new strategy would fail. So this is align evaluation reward to the right performance metrics. So that's supporting. And the last one, people feel weighted down and undermined by the wrong process and structure. If your process, organization structure, your system are not supporting your strategy would also fail. So what it means that the role of the leader, if you want to align your people to the strategy, you need to understand each one of these 6 dimensions and be able to address each of these 6 dimensions. So what are they? The first one, yes, go back.
The before last.
Which one? Performance and reward systems. The performance evaluation and reward system, reward the wrong behaviors and even punish the reward the wrong behavior. Okay? And it's no type. So what are these? So this is your role. So Michel's role, if he is deciding to implement a new strategy, he needs to make sure that his customer value proposition is clear. The question is, why should customer buy from us for this? He needs to ensure that the leaders, how do my leaders enable and support me to do the job? So the leaders are here to support the people to do this job. So this is tools, this is training, this is coaching. So this is quite important. He needs to make sure that his process and his structure are here to support the strategy. So do we have the right organization structure? Do we have the right policy and procedures, or they're not aligned? He needs to make sure that his performance metrics are clear and aligned. He needs to make sure that there is a clear way of communicating it, and of course he needs to make sure that the culture of the organization is also aligned. So your role, his role as a founder, each of you's role as founders of your own company, you need to clarify these 6 dimensions. If they're clear and if they're aligned, this is how you increase the chances that your strategy will be executed. So this is another model. It's a simple model. It looks at 6 dimensions. Now McKinsey will call it the 6S. Booz might call it the 8 M's or whatever you have. But this is the model that you have to do. Your role as a leader, if it's a startup or it's a small, medium-sized enterprises, is you need to look at these 6 axes and answer honestly, are you doing the job that you need to do in order for the people to succeed in aligning themselves to the strategy? You are the one who has the responsibility to make it. So it's important to do, and you have different, and I'll show you now examples. Yes.
How the challenge is to find out the best governance
Yes.
to address these different.
Yes. And I will share with you now some of the best practices. So which is the line, what can you do in order to be able to improve on these ones? So I will go, now we don't have a lot of time, we have about 45 minutes to go through. In 45, now you have the whole slide set. You have the whole slide set, but in 45 minutes I'll share some of you the best practices that we have, that you as a founder, that you as a SME owner, that you could do in order to develop it. So your role again, leadership is what? We define leadership. Leadership is really taking your 6 dimensions and ensuring these 6 dimensions, ensuring that you have clarity and aligning your people around these dimensions. So it's about this alignment that is quite important. So I'm going to take one by one. I'm going to take the first one, which is your customer value proposition. We've done it. I don't want to spend more time. I explained to you the 4 dimensions: product, product plus, price, product, product plus, and solution. These are the 4. I gave you example of each of the 4. You need to work on where are you positioned with your own product. The second one is on the culture. And I'll spend time why is culture important. And what is your role as a leader to make sure that the culture is aligned to what the new strategy is going to be. The third one is in terms of communication. They don't understand the strategy. You have to explain the strategy. You have to position it in a way that people can grab it, get it, and make sure that they understand. The fourth one is on the behavior, is on the support, the coaching, the listening, the development of your team. The fourth one is on setting the right performance metrics, and the fifth one is making sure that you process. Each one is a different skill set. This is why being a leader is not easy. Being a leader is not easy because a lot of it had to do with different skill sets. Putting a customer proposition had to do with you have to think strategically. What are you positioning? Doing performance metrics is much more having the structure, having the rigor, following what are these KPIs, monitoring these KPIs. Leadership behavior, it's about coaching, it's about listening, it's about empowering. So it's different skill set for each of these dimensions. And we're asking you as a founder to inhibit on all these dimensions to be able to implement it. Now let's focus on culture. Now we have done this, I don't want to spend too much time. This is the customer value proposition. We go on culture. Now, what is culture? How do you describe the culture at speed? Hala. What is the culture at speed? So how would you describe the culture at speed? No, but culture. I'm not asking you to describe speeds. The culture is how are things being done at speed? Okay, so part of it is fast. So you have fast. What is the other way? You're getting now to more the services that they provide. I'm looking at the culture. The culture is the soul of the company. Look how you are. You're all on tables. Each one of you has, it's basically open environments. So it's open environments that you have. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about making mistakes, coming in, drawing the board, erasing, coming back. So it's entrepreneurship, it's openness, it's transparency, it's taking risks. So all this is, do you agree with me, Hala? Do you want to add other things in terms of the culture? Very good. No. Anyway, thank you. No.
We'll be investing in you.
No, should. Okay, no. Look, I give you example of culture. So for instance, on the price, you will see that the culture is very different. On the price, it's about being efficient operator. This is of course a caricature. Even in my private life, I like to see how I can do things more efficiently. I have already figured out how to eat my breakfast in 6 minutes and brush my teeth in 30 seconds. So this is, of course, it's an exaggeration. This is what? Cholesterol. Okay, this is about efficient operation. Here is about effective marketeers, loyalty program, getting sure that you have these companies that are here. Here is about creative designers. What is she is creation, designer, building a brand, a customer experience. Here is about providing all solutions to your customers. So it's a different culture according to where you are. So now managing a culture is very difficult, especially if you're trying to change the culture. When you change the culture, typically when you want, for instance, when, give me an example, I'm using HP and Compaq. They described the current culture. They felt that the HP culture was too laid back. We will go, we will brainstorm, we will disagree, agree, and then we would reach the time and everybody is empowered. But this took time. So they felt that there is no time left in the computer industry. We're talking about the 90s when they decided, early 2000, they decided to buy Compaq. They wanted, the current culture had some flow back. What culture do you need to implement in your strategy? So how do you want to change it? What is the gap? So the gap in the case of HP was slow in terms of execution. You had empowerment of the people, but you had slow in terms of execution. What is the gap and how do you bridge the gap? Now to do a culture change, this graph is very important. It shows you, and you've probably seen it. So it takes Marguerite, even if I apply it to her life, whenever you're faced with a change, a big change in your life, you go through 4 phases typically. One phase, and this could be death in the family. It could be a completely acquisition of a company. I mentioned the HP Compaq thing. It could be, I mentioned the 2 startups that are merging with each other. What you do is you have one phase which is the denial phase. This cannot happen. This cannot happen. Why does it happen to me? What did I do? This is not fair. So you have a phase which is denial. You have another phase which is basically here frustration, irritation. Here I'm denying. You're under shock. Here you basically are pushing back. It cannot, your anger, confusion, strong emotions, you're pushing. Here you're shocked. You can't even react. You are under complete shock. You're paralyzed. Here you start to push back on it. Here you start to see the light out of the tunnel, and here you're fully engaged to go on it. Now you have to understand, if you go through even a divorce, or even through a separation, or you go through these phases. When you go through a cultural change, you need to understand how to merge these 2 cultures. And your role as a leader is to first understand that these 4 phases are going to take place. And people will go through this phase with very low, and their emotions will be low, their motivation will be low, they might go through a depression in this case, and to help them in terms of get out of this. And the way you do it is by listening, is by helping, is by letting them grieve on what is happening. And this is your role as a leader, so as you are able to move from this side to the other side. So this takes a lot of maturity in understanding, in explaining. If, for instance, you decide, look, Michel decided to change the organization, this is what we're going to do, we bought the company, finish, and we don't explaining, people would push back. And his chances of derailing, if he didn't let the people express their emotion, if he didn't let the people express the confusion that they have and be able to address it, it could hit him in a year down the road or 2 years down the road, because the whole process would derail. So you need to understand these 4 phases, and the support that you provide in this case, you provide support, here you provide direction, and here of course you encourage and you involve. So you have your role as a leader, your role as a founder of a company is to understand these 4 phases and to adapt and help your people go through the phases. The better you are at understanding how to implement these changes and implement the change in culture, the more effective the people are going to resemble and follow you. Is this clear? It's a slide that is important. Now how do you do it? Typically in any change in culture, yes, Marguerite?
The 3 Fs.
The 3 what?
3 Fs.
Yes.
Fast, focus, and flexible.
Okay,
So it's very important
to have so fast. Okay. So you have different ways of looking at it. It's a model that you have. Now, your role when you have a change, I'm giving the example because this is a live case. It's 2 companies. These are 2 companies. One is funded by AM Capital. The other company is funded by another private equity capital. They're merging the 2 companies together. They have completely different culture behind it. You have people that behave differently and people that do not necessarily. So it's not only for big companies. This is for startups that we are merging. You're going to have 4 types of behavior. You have one type of behavior. You have people that will say, I'm the victim. Why me? Why it's happening to me? Again, it's me. So they tend to be always, very depressed by the whole thing. You have people who are very critical. It's going to fail, and I'm sure it's going to fail, and I'll do whatever I can do in order to make sure that Michel is going to fail in his new strategy. And you have people that feel this way. So they will fail. You have other people that are bystanders. Bystanders means I'm going to wait. I'm going to see which direction is the wind blowing, and if the wind is blowing in the right direction, I will follow Michel. If it's not blowing in the right direction, I will go to the critics, and I will say you're the right guy. And then you have the navigator. The navigator are the people who champion. They look at the change as an opportunity to make things different. You need to understand who are in these 5 categories in your team, where are they? And you need to address each one of them differently. You normally focus on the navigator because he is your champion or she is the champion of the change. She's going to help you implement the change in the organization. And all change you're going to have pushback on this thing. You have to listen to the others, but you need to make sure that the navigator is going to be successful, because once he's successful, what happens? The bystander, it's going in the right direction, I will follow. So this will be the first one that will follow. The critics might continue to criticize. At one point in time, you have to decide. If you have enough traction, and if you have enough bystanders coming in here, you go and you talk to the critics. This is the direction. This is the way we're going. You're either on this or you're out of it. So, and if you're out of it, you better go out of it. But there is no point, we have no room for you to continue. And your role also as the leader, whenever you're going to implement change, you're going to have the 4 dynamics. And you need to know who are, and in your team, I'll bet you that you're going to have each of one. And you need to know how you talk to each one of them in order to ensure that they are embarking in yours. Is this clear? Now, there is a roadmap when you're implementing change. You could decide your own roadmap, but this is one that could be, whenever you're making a change in an organization, and I use the example of the merger of these 2 companies, you need, if you want the change to be effective, one of the recipe is you create a sense of urgency. Sense of urgency means, if we did not do this merger, this is what would have reacted. In the case of these 2 companies, both companies would have gone bankrupt, because they have complementary products, but both companies were not generating the revenue, both companies were not generating the profit. So the alternative to the merger is both companies will go out of business. So then you create a sense of urgency. We have no choice, but we have to go. If you don't create a sense of urgency, people are too comfortable. When I started with El Ghurair, the way I created a sense of urgency is when I showed them the past, I shared with you in the past, the investments over the past 5 years that they have done above a certain amount of volume, and I told them this is how much value has been destroyed in the investment that you have done over the past 5 years. I created a sense of urgency. Then people, shit, you know, we have gone, then they start listening. If they've done great things, we don't need you, Constantin. Whatever is implemented is not working. But what you are and your role as a founder is, what is your burning platform? Even if you don't have a burning platform, create a burning platform in order to have the people around you. So this is the first one. So think a bit, what is going to be your burning platform or sense of urgency? The second one, and this was critical when I took the role also, is I had around me 4 or 5 people. These are critical people that I relied completely. It was my head of finance, head of HR, head of strategy, head of legal. These people were day and night, whenever there is a thing, they knew they could rely on me completely, and I knew I could rely on them completely. So you have your guiding, and you need to have your core team, your SWAT team around you that will help you no matter how big the waves are going to be. Then you set your vision. You created your platform, burning platform. You have a bright team, and these teams are very close and they're willing to support you whatever happens in it. Then you set the direction. This is what are we going to do, this is how we're going to do it. It needs to be clear, it needs to be crystal on this. Then you communicate it. Not once, 2 times, one-on-one, big teams. This communication of your vision is quite important. So here it's what? Here is about deciding. You need to be very creative in terms of your sense of urgency. Here is you need to be great in making sure that people trust you and people want to work with you. Here it's about your vision, how good of a vision you are. Here is how good of a communicator you are. Completely different skill set. With Ziad, what we've done is we looked at what are we going to evaluate him on. He came up with 7 criteria. Part of it was communication. Part of it was vision. Part of it was making sure that he could build a very performing. All these characteristics are characteristics that would help him in terms of championing change and making change complex. Empower others to act on the vision. You have to delegate. You have to make sure that your people are part of, if not, it becomes your change. It's not your change, it's their change. So this is why you need to make sure that you're empowering the people to make on it. Plan and create short-term win. This is fundamental. This one, the low-hanging fruits are critical. If you want your strategy to win, or your new culture, or whatever you're implementing to change to win, you need to have low-hanging fruits when it's working. And you need to celebrate them. So people know it's working, we're celebrating it, we're on the right track. So plan for visible performance, creating those improvements, recognize and reward employees involved in the improvement. Then you consolidate the improvement and to produce more changes. This is when you get all the others, the bystanders, you hide them, the people, the victims, this is why you get them on board, and then you institutionalize the whole process and you complete the loop. So these are steps. Each of these steps are important. The burning platform is important. We tend to forget it. The guiding coalition in my case was very important. You know, also you need to have a clear vision. You need to be a good communicator. You need to empower the people. Is get the right people as a leadership. If one of the statements that we have is you're strong, how do you recognize strong people? The strong leader is people who hires great talent, but the second characteristic is the person who delegates. So you have the great people on board, you delegate. If you're trying to centralize everything, you're not a great leader. So delegation is empowering is very important. And then of course make sure that the framework is set and help whenever you need to help. So this is a roadmap in terms of also best practices. Hi Sami. Sami and Faris are the two, for those of you who don't know them, they're the two leaders for Speed here and they're hosting us for this afternoon. Thank you both. Okay, and I did the pitch on your slides. But most of the people knows you, but a few new faces. You're here, very good. Okay, great. Okay, any questions? So we discussed on the culture. So I shared with you the culture. So for instance, when I'm having now the workshop with the two companies merged into one of the things that we're going to discuss is about the combination of culture and the change management that being associated with it. So this is something that is important. Explain it to them and make sure that people have the opportunity to voice their concern on what's happening. Is this working? It's not working. So you need to be, because you need to listen. If you don't listen and you force things down the throat of your people, it's not going to work. You know, I have friends of mine that had a big impact in their life. If they don't take the time to mourn this death or this separation, it's going to haunt them in 3 and 5 and 6 and 10 years down the road. So take the time to grieve, take the time to listen, and your role is as a leader is you need to make sure that you're taking the time, not too much time, but you need to give the time for people to understand. You need to give time for people to express their concern. You need to give time for people to be able to then see what the light is out of the tunnel and then help them and grow into this. This is your role as a leader to be able to do this, okay? Yes, go back, yes. One more? Yes.
Yes. This is
هلا كبيت مي من فضلك. thank you. كبيتين والله you're شو بدي اقول لك؟ ايه.
From a strategic perspective, this has to do, I think, with the way the different people of the business is perceiving how. Which strategy was it? The critics maybe seeing the strategy as not the appropriate one.
You're right.
So it's really something that may touch the core of the business and how you manage it.
I agree. So what is your question?
The question is this has to do with how the strategy is really how properly is it
implemented. Conceived. You're right.
And how properly is
I agree. I agree.
With the different actors.
I agree. So yeah, I agree. The critics, maybe for instance, when I was at HP, I was critical against the merger, and we were 49% of us were against it. We felt it was the wrong decision, and history proved us right. It was not the right decision for HP, and from this point in time, HP completely eroded in terms of value, in terms of market share. We used to be 100 times the valuation of Apple, 100 times the valuation. Actually, Steve Wozniak, who started Apple with Steve Jobs, was actually an HP employee who came, provided, and HP said, no, it's not, we don't, and they refused the design, so he went with Steve Jobs and created Apple on it. So we were against. So we were critics. And we were wrong. We were right as critics with the time. But the way she went about, Carly went about, the CEO at this time, is that she focused on those, and then she managed it. But at the end of the day, she managed the change. She went through the change. It was good. No more slides. I'm sorry? الساعة 6 بالضبط والله منيح too bad. So we have some more slides coming in. يسلم وجس فكرنا وقفتي لازم نطلع نفضي الصف. ايه Carly. So what to come back to the point is that her strategy at the end proved to be the wrong strategy, and the critics were right to be critics. But the way she went about to ensure, and she won at the end because she managed to convince 51% to go through it, is she adopted a bit of this approach by focusing on the one that could be these champions, making sure that these champions will. But at the end, if you look back, although the approach succeeded and she managed to get the merger and she implemented it, the output of it was not. So the critics were, if there is no slide, this will be good. Yes, Paul.
Talking about the decision to acquire Compact.
Yes.
You were against it?
Yes, completely. So we were, and we voiced it. It was very close. It was a very close race. And at the end, even the founders, the sons, you know, the Hewlett and the Packards were against it, you know, as shareholders. So there was a big, and it caused a big division in the company.
Convince the client, one of the clients at the end.
Yeah.
Why were you against it?
No, because we felt it from a strategic point of view, the only way to go would be to go where the profit pools are. And the profit pool are not in acquiring Compact, but if you have to acquire software company, acquire outsourcing companies. So I think the IBM strategy was the only viable one at this point in time. And going for the PC approach, which is basically desktop in an environment where there is very little value to create on it. They had a number of reasons behind. They said one is going to be economies of scale, so we could negotiate with Microsoft and with Intel. The other one was the fact that if you dominate the PC is the entry point. Then you could have the server, you could have the printers around it. Then you could evolve to the servers. So they said, let's dominate this, and then we could upgrade and go and move in. But it's all about hardware, and the name of the game is really not hardware. It goes back to the 3S.
It did work for Lenovo.
No, but what Lenovo has done, it worked for Lenovo, but what IBM has done is they spinned it. So they said we don't.
Yeah, but from Lenovo's perspective.
From Lenovo, now.
Why was it not a failure, the acquisition of
Of Compact? Because you see.
IBM?
No, but for IBM's case, it was not a failure. It was a good thing to spin off. So what IBM is spinned off. Now, when Paul is saying it's a good thing, Lenovo worked. Now, Lenovo was successful. With their model, they were successful. Part of it could to do with the fact that in China you have a huge market. You know, it could be the cost that they have. You might have some different reasons behind. But from an IBM perspective, it was the right thing for IBM to spin it off. They spinned off the printer. It became Lexmark. They made an IPO out of it, and then they decided we're going to focus on this. HP did completely the reverse. They said not only we're not going to spin off our PC, we're going to acquire another PC manufacturer. So let me continue. What time is it again? I'm sorry. Okay, 6. So what we have done is we covered culture. We covered the customer value proposition. I'm giving you now templates and ideas about how to do it. We're going to focus on one which is basically on strategy commitment. Basically, it's on the way you communicate your strategy. Now, when you communicate, you have to, who do you communicate to? A strategy. Who are the people you communicate your strategy to? To what? To your staff. The first thing is to your staff, to the managers, to the management team. Who else? You could be advisors. They will give you feedback. You have boards that comes, they validate your strategy, they approve it. Who else do you communicate strategy?
The staff.
And to the staff. We said staff. What else? To your clients. Clients want to know where you are, where you're going. So they want to know whether they want to continue buying from you. Who else? So suppliers you could do. Who else? I mean, all the stakeholders. You have also the investors. The banks want to know what is your strategy. Your equity partners want to know. So you have different ways. So what I'm saying here is that you will see that there are completely different ways of stakeholders. And these stakeholders, you've summarized them. We have customers, it could be government, suppliers, employees, the public, investors. What I'm asking you now to do, and you will see, is that the way you communicate your strategy is going to differ depending who you're talking to. So the first thing I'm asking you to do is to be able to segment your stakeholders according to these categories. On one category, look at the influence. High influence versus no influence. And you have on impact versus highly impacted. So those who are not going to be impacted and those who has no influence are here. Those who have high influence and going to be highly impacted as here. So the first thing I'm asking you to do is who are your stakeholders and map your stakeholders. Trying to put your stakeholders around this axis. And then depending who the stakeholders are and how you've mapped them, your strategy, for instance here in high impact, if you decide, for instance, your strategy is going to decide to, you're going to merge the two companies, and part of it is you're going to reduce 20% of the workforce because there is, so who is going to, the employees are going to be highly impacted. The employees from this are going to have a high, so these are high impact people. You know, the low impact people would be the shareholders. They will say they're not impacted. Actually, they might be impacted positively because you are reducing the cost, then you're improving the profit. Okay, so this is one. So typically in terms of high influence, high impact, so you, key staff affected, major investors, key partners, major customers. Now these people, you decide to address them in either face-to-face, the way you have frequent two-way communication, phone calls, you make it personal to them. If these are low impact and no influence, it's a newsletter, an email, intranet. So you need to, one, decide who your stakeholders are. You group your stakeholders in terms of this is one model, to high impact and high influence. And then you decide to adapt and this you do it intuitively. Sometimes you don't even think about. This is one way to help you think about it and decide how you want to communicate to them. So this is part of your role as a leader, to decide how you want to communicate your message according to who the stakeholders are. And this is one way of mapping it. Is it clear? Any questions on this? Okay, so you have, so this is one way in terms of communication. So you have this, it's an exercise. Now when you are communicating, there are a few bullet points. Typically when you communicate, and this I don't need to explain, for the speed people, they've done it because they had 5 minutes. They had 5 minutes to present their case. What did they do in 5 minutes? They typically explain the market. They will tell how is the market, how big is the market. They explain how they're going to generate revenue. They explain also briefly what sort of financials they're going to reach. What is the roadmap in terms of what are the different, and they had 5 minutes to do all this, and they covered a couple of other points. So here is, when you deliver it, top 3, don't make it too confusing. If there is too big of a laundry list, nobody is going to listen to you. Keep it short and simple, because you've heard it before. It's always, the more simple it is, the better it is to be understood. Make it relevant to the audience. Use examples that they could relate to. Anticipate tough questions, reaction. Always be ready to be able to deal with them. Use pictures, symbols, metaphor, which is better than too many words. Use colors, photos. Be authentic, be respectful. So this is much more, it's not only about mapping your stakeholders, understanding their needs, deciding how you want to communicate, but also coming up with a clear communication that is relevant to your audience. It is again your role to be able to do it. When Rima is going to present to a banker, she's going to present differently than when she is presenting to her board. And she's going to be presenting differently when she's presenting to her head of sales that she's going to hire. So she will adapt her strategy depending who she's talking to. So this is one way. On one slide, you could have everything. You could have, this is we call the house, the strategy house. You could have your vision and your mission, basically why you exist, you know, as a vision, you know, and mission. And the difference between the two, the vision is something that you're aiming at continuously. The vision explains who you are your customers, and what you're trying to deliver. You could have your values are here. These are the values that are important to you. It could be integrity, it could be accountability, it could be innovation, it could be what? Respect of people. It could be, what are the examples of values? Transparency. Other examples of values. I'm sorry? Yes, teamwork could be others. So these are examples of values. Then you look at the strategic objectives. So these are, what are the strategic, so 1, 2, and 3. This is the exercise that I've done with Ziad. So these are the priorities. And for each of these priorities, so one of them was he wants to set up the operation across the MENA region. So then we go into subset. Okay, KSI. What you want to do? First, market size. Do we have a market evaluation? How big is the market? How much? Who are the right distributors in there? Who are we going to go about it? How are we going to go about meeting with? So you list all the subsets in order for him to achieve his priority, which is basically to have a fully operational distributor model in the MENA region across the countries where he believes that there. So this is one example. I'm sorry? BU is business units. So it could be here business unit, but in his case, it could be different initiatives that you have. and then you could have supporting initiatives. So this is one way. On one side, he has a clarity in terms of who he is, what is his vision. He has clarities on the values. He knows what are the strategic objectives, and for each of the objectives, he set up very clear targets, and then he might have some supporting initiative, like in here, I don't know, he wants to develop the brand. It's quite important for him. The other one that he wants to do is he wants to, I forgot what they are, but these, so on one slide, and this is easy because when you show it to your employee, on one slide you have everything. So they could relate to it very easily. So what I'm encouraging you to do as founders of your own company is try to position your strategy under one slide. And instead of one slide, then people will put it. They know it. They will know, and then they visualize it, and it comes not only, they remember it. So they remember it. So this is, and it becomes, so this is about communication. We talked about the culture, we talked about the value proposition, and we talk about communication. So communication is, the fourth one is really about leadership behavior. Leadership behavior is about finding the right talents, hiring the right talents, and this is the most difficult one in Lebanon, to find the right talents. It's about making sure that this talent is developed, retaining this talent. We had one of the companies on ours, the number 2 guy decided to leave. I won't mention the company, he decided to leave. Now, why is a person leaving? This person had been with the organization for 7 to 8 years. For us as shareholders, it's a red mark, you know, what's happening to this organization. So he decided, so retention of talent, if you don't do, there is something behind it. So what is behind it? Is it salary? It might not be salary. It might be strategy alignment. It might be governance related. It might be other elements, values that is coming up. So your role as leadership behavior, people do not feel able or willing to take initiative in support of this strategy. So your role is to ensure that the people are empowered to be able to act. So how do you do it? So the way you do it, it's really about, okay, this is about human capital development. First, it's getting the right people on board. The first thing, and a lot of people say, like we have the discussion with Ziad, he said, Ziad, we need to get a guy. So I said, how much is going to be for you? I told him $200,000. If you want to have the right person in the US to do this and to be able, his first reaction is, it's a lot of money. You know, 200,000. I said to Ziad, look, this is a market. This is how big the market is. This is the job of this person who needs to be. If you have the bonus and if you have all the long-term retention, this is going to be his package. We're not in Lebanon. In Lebanon, you could get it for half the price, a quarter of the price on it, but this is what it costs. You need to get the right people on board. It always stays for them. Then you need to make sure that you help them develop. I mean, Joanna is in the back. So Joanna wants to move to become, you know, from an operation manager to become a chief operating officer. For this, she has a long way. But Ziad is willing to provide the right competency. So he said, Constantin, how can we do it? I said, shadowing. You know, listening to the workshops. He's been in every single one of these workshops. Then shadowing, sitting down with other heads, operations heads, and listening to what they do. This is another way of learning. You know, the other is giving her specific projects. So all this is part of his role as a leader. His first is to make sure he's right. I mean, she is a great talent. She's a wonderful lady. He's taking and making investment to make sure that she is developed properly. Know the talents of your people. So one of the exercises that we do, and we've done it here with the team in BSynchro, is we looked at it and every one of the leaders of the leadership team assessed themselves and they assessed the other people in the leadership team. And they've been working together for a number of years. They've done the assessment, and based on these assessments, they also give feedback on what are the 2 or 3 things that are working great with Michel or with Hala or with others, and what are the 2 or 3 things that Michel is not doing great and could develop. Then what you do is you start to get your own assessment, but you have also feedback coming from all the others in terms of what they value you, that you're doing very well, and what are the other things that you need to develop. So this becomes the first. And then what you do is you sit down with Ziad, or you sit down with Michel, or you sit down with Dima, or with Marguerite, and then we work together on your development plan. So in the case of Joanna, if this is what she wants to do, she needs to have shadowing of she will go through the special training, she will have special projects. So all this will be part of the development plan. By doing this, what Ziad or Michel are doing, they basically are helping this person. Not only he hired the right person, and Michel did the same thing, but he's helping these people grow and develop the skill set. All this is part of the process. So what does it take? It takes coaching, mentoring. It takes listening and learning, role modeling. So what you do here, if you have skill sets which are completely foreign, you never learn these at school. You'll never learn this at universities. You'll never learn these at on-the-job training. But these are probably the most important. So a lot of the skills that are important for you as founders and our potential leaders is to develop these soft skills. And these soft skills are around. You coach, you listen, you know which questions to ask. You let the time to reflect. You give the chance to learn. You do role modeling. You walk the talk. So all of these are really the soft skills. And as you grow in the organization, as you become, your soft skills become more important than the hard skills. What are the hard skills? Is you are a project manager. You do computer programming. You have a financial analyst. So these are the hard skills. As you grow in the organization, the soft skills become more important. And for you to become an effective leader, these soft skills will end up making a difference between a good leader and between a great leader. So this will be, so in the case of leadership, if you look at price, product, process, solution, you will see that in the case of price, it's about structure, discipline, quick, efficient, process-oriented. In the case of product, loyal defenders of the product, persuasive, market-oriented. On the product side, the leadership, it's about creation, innovation, daring, design-oriented. Here it's about entrepreneurial, knowledgeable, flexible. So you have different leadership style depending again. So the type of people that you hire will be different depending on what these customer value proposition they are. So the summary behind it is that your role is to hire the best people. Your role is to make sure that they understand what is expected from them through the KPIs. Your role is to ensure that they have the right tools to be able to do the job. Your role is to ensure that there is the right teamwork that is created to empower these, and this is a lot about the soft skills that you need to implement. Okay, so this is the force, and this is your role as a leader if you want to align them. So what a leader does, develops and shares the vision, communicates and engages at all levels, visibly shows commitment by active involvement, and here there is a typo, Raja. Develops self and others, provides appropriate resources, develops suitable strategy for each, recognize contribution, success, promotes the organization, measures things that matter, and of course people then are clear what is expected from them, they want to meet the leader's expectation, extend and develop themselves, basically they're engaged. So it's your role to create this. And it takes time, it takes patience, it takes listening. It's not about giving orders, it's about listening, and it's about helping in terms of directing. It's not like it's either this way or the highway. Sometimes you have to do it, but in most cases it's important to do the listening. Now we've covered this, we covered the communication, we covered the leadership behavior. We're going to cover two which are more on the engineering side. So this is not the soft, this is much more in terms of the hardcore, but they're important. And it's your role as leader again to set these. So on the performance metrics, I've explained it a number of times. You need to measure a few things. So what we did is this morning with Ziad is we put together his balance scorecard. So we listed about 5, 6 key performance indicators that he is going to be accountable. So in a quarter down the road or 2 quarters down the road, when he's presenting to his board, he said, look, this is how I've done compared to these key performance indicators. And the board will then comment on it. So this is his balance scorecard. Now this is important. Over the past 4 years or 5 years, he didn't have one. So for the first time, he is going to have one. For the first time, he's going to be accountable in front of the board. Before this, I don't want to point fingers, but Sami has been very open and friendly, and he had revenues projection that he had to meet, but now it's much more structured. Now some of the leaders of some of the companies that we have funded decided they don't want to implement it, because once you implement this, then it becomes transparent. Then it's become very clear what is expected from Ziad, or what is expected from Michel, or what is expected from Rima, and then he is also accountable. If it doesn't work, it's not. He is accountable, it is transparent, and a lot of people in our part of the world don't like transparency. They don't. They don't want to and they don't like accountability. It's always somebody else's problem. It's never my problem. By implementing this, you have transparency, you have accountability, and you have basically consistency, because it's not only about him, it's not only about Michel, it's about all the people in the team who are, most of them in this room, who are delegating this down. So this process of having few KPIs, clear implementation project with milestone, which we define as the key strategic initiatives, Okay, performance, the way you could do it balanced scorecard. You have another way, which MBO, which is managing by objective. EFQM is the European, F, I forgot, quality management, European framework for quality management. Then you have to track the results, as Samar has said, and then you have to relate your compensation. So it's not only about setting the KPIs, it's setting the project, tracking the results, and paying. So at the end of the day, when Joanna is going to get her KPIs and then going to get her measures, at the end of the day, she's tracking. We have a way to say whether she has done a good job, a very good job, or an excellent job. But most importantly for her is how is it going to impact my pockets. So if there is no linkage to her pockets, this whole thing loses a bit of interest. So this is why it's important. And her bonus or her stock option, if she has stock options, will depend on her ability to be able to do it. By doing this, you basically are linking and closing the loop. So now, this is a survey conducted by Deloitte. This is an old one, but today you'll do it the same. You have, in this case, employees are completely aware of the company's strategic objective and how their own job goals are linked to these objectives. And if you look at it, completely agree, you only have about, in this case, 8% and 26% somewhat agree. So only 8% completely agree. So in most cases, if you ask employees, they don't know how their own job performance goals are linked to the objectives of the company. Your role as a founder is to clarify this. Similar sort, individuals are rewarded with incentive linked to the success in meeting. Only 10% would agree. Most will not agree. Your role, I'm sorry?
This is a big issue.
It's a big issue. It's a big issue.
So they will hold, it's a political issue.
So if you don't link, he's reacting. Hakim is reacting at that. No, Mathieu, you're right. It is a big issue. So what you need to do, and your role as founders, but also as politicians, is you need to make sure that you have a linkage between the job that you do, the KPIs that you generated, and the bonus you're getting. And if there is no connect, there is no motivation. If there is no motivation, and you have to create it. You have to find out first what are the right KPIs, and you start from where? You start from the top. When we started with Michel. When we started with Yael. When we started with Rida. And then it cascades down. Now Joanna is next step. The next time we get together, she's going to present what her balance scorecard is going to be, and we go down. Okay, so what are the KPIs? So when you have the KPIs, for instance, if you have price, remember price, product, here it's about transaction profitability. Six Sigma is the way to optimize a process. Here it's about product or service profitability and or market share. Here is about brand value, brand recognition, customer satisfaction. This is important on the brand. Solution, it's about customer lifetime value. It's not 1 year, it's over a period of 4 or 5 years. Customer profitability and or customer satisfaction that you have. So you have different KPIs depending where you are in terms of your customer value proposition. Questions? We're moving ahead. Okay. So what are the types of, it could be financial, it could be customers. The one we tend to use the most are financials. More and more we're starting to use customer related indicators. But in some cases, if you're in a factory and you have desks, that is health, safety, environmental becomes very important. So really it's up to you to decide. Internal process or operations, innovation could be important. You decide out of those which are the one that makes most sense. Some of them are duplicates in this case. Okay, so when you have the objective to your team, SMART means what? Specific, measurable, aligned, realistic, time-bound. If they're not specific, they won't. Measurable, if you cannot measure it, they would be doing it. Aligned with what the bosses is. Realistic means making them stretchy, but they have to make sure that they could. And time-bound, that there is specific deadlines. Okay, so you have these 5, realistic enough to be motivating, and you have this. So your role again, is to ensure that these are SMART objectives that you're setting up. And this takes time. You do a one way, you do a second way behind it. So what's important is not only that you do it at the CEO level, but it needs to factor and go down to the objective. And ideally, if you cascade it down, maybe not the first year, but maybe over 2 or 3 years, then everybody realizes what their impact is on what's happening to the company. if you could do it. Now, I don't want to make it too complicated. It could be only one or two things. So in this case, develop and launch new portfolio of value-added services in 2007. This is the company. Integrate at the department new services into sales to 70% of key accounts in 2007. Example, sell new service to X to account A, B, and C by August 2000. So this is a way to support. So they're all supporting what the company wants to do. And your role, again, is to ensure the cascading. Here we have transparency, we have accountability, and we have cascading. Cascading means that you have a greater chance to be able to make a change in the organization. And again, it's your role as the leader, as a founder, to make this happen. This is another example. I'll give you the slide so you don't need to... okay, so this was about process and structure that you have. Okay, so this slide here summarizes. I'm giving you examples. So if you have one slide, so you have, remember, we have the value proposition. We have price, product, product plus solution. I'm giving you an example. In price, I used Dell. Dell was extremely cost competitive, and they did it by primarily doing what? It was on-time delivery. It was you buy on the internet. So all these elements were cutting cost out of. No need for resellers, no need for distributors, no need for inventory, because they will have minimum inventory, and then they will manufacture as you place your order. Yes.
Isn't Dell known more for custom-made computers?
It is custom-made, but by doing custom-made, it's true. But at the same time, they ended up eating. The only company that was making money was Dell in the time where you had.
Custom-made.
Because it was not only custom-made, because what they've done is from orders were placed on the internet. So it wasn't only custom-made, it was sold directly. So they cut off completely all the brokers, all the dealers, all the distributors. So all these profit margins went when? Lower price to the customer, higher margin in their own pocket. So price was an element. So everything that they have, inventory was zero, very close to zero on these things.
So, no, but they managed to cut the price because they got rid of so many other elements because of the custom made.
It was, but their strategy was a cash strategy. They wanted to cut the cost. Now you could, it's chicken and egg situation, Roger. But the other product is most airlines. Here on the product plus, I used Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson, it's not only about the brand. You know, it's a religion. You know, I don't know if somebody of you knows some Harley Davidson people. I mean, these people, it's their family. They have stronger ties sometimes to their holiday, and they have hug. One of the projects that I had my son work on was to create, not for Harley, it was for competing for Polaris. Polaris is the, I don't know if you're, is the jet ski, and they also do the quads day. And he had to create a user group. So the hug is the Harley user group. Now the hug is the most important way where Harley realized how to create and strengthen the value. So when you go to these events, it's a huge party. You know, they're all dressed in a certain way, and I tell you, every one of their shirts and everything cost a fortune. You know, all one of the accessories on the motor cost a fortune. They don't care. They want to be part. It's for them. It's like this. It's a religion. They have the club. They do these outings. They will go do trips. Some of these trips could be 2 days, could be 1 week. You see them one after the other going. So Harley has created a brand, and around the brand have created a community, and they've done an excellent job in terms of strengthening the brand. In solution, I use McKinsey as a management consultant. This will be an example. So remember, we have price, product, product plus, and solution. Then we had these. This is your role. Your role is customer. You need to clarify the customer value proposition. Where are you? And for each one, you will see that there is different. Lower overall cost to customer, standard product and product price, distinctive branded product and service, total solution, tailored or unique. On strategy commitment is basically how do you go about ensuring that your communication is effective. So this is how you get the people on board. So it's on leadership support, it's really about providing the coaching, the listening. On the performance metrics, here it's about transaction, here it's about customer profitability or brand value. Process and structure, what is the process that you have in place, what is the structure, and finally the culture. So your role is to clarify each one of these, the 6 dimensions, depending where you are on these. And this is one example to put it all in one piece. We covered a lot. We covered over the past 2 hours and a half. We looked at strategy. What is the definition of strategy? And then we looked at the different tools that you could use in order to help you shape your strategic plan or your strategic direction. And these tools could be either internal assessment, like a SWOT analysis, or it could be in terms of your core competencies, or it could be external in terms of the market trends, in terms of your competitive differentiator, or it could be in terms of the value chain is more internal. So you have different tools and different templates. Each of these tools and the templates, it's not for you to complete them alone, it's for you to complete them with teams. The more you have the team in place, the more empowerment, the more buy-in you have. So I encourage you to be familiar with the tools, to decide which are the ones that are applicable, which are the ones that are not applicable, and have ideally an outside facilitator if you don't want to do it, so as to make sure that you extract the most of your team. So we covered what is strategy, we covered the different strategic tools that we have, and then we covered what is the model in order to be able to align the people to your strategy. Once you have a strategy, and this model is around what? Defining a customer value proposition. What is the customer value proposition? It's either price, or it's product, or it's product plus or brand, or it's a solution that you want. And you could be in one, or you could be in two. But if you are in two, then you have to design the organization accordingly. So this is the customer value proposition. Then we went into defining the way you communicate. The way you communicate to it, keep it simple. I mentioned the one slide, the strategic house, keep it in your mind. And the way you communicate, decide who are the stakeholders that you are communicating to and adapt it according to the stakeholders. If I'm talking to the bankers, I'm going to project the future and say how much value is going to be created. If I'm talking to customers, I'm going to focus on the new product and services that I'm going to be introducing. If I'm talking to employees, I'm going to talk to them about the organization structure, how it's going to evolve, what are the things that are going to impact them in terms of training, development, compensation. So you will pinpoint areas depending on who the stakeholders are, and according to this you will then adapt. So the way you communicate is quite important. Understand your stakeholder, customize your pitch to the stakeholders, keep it simple, be authentic, be honest, be open. This is the way you are. Trying to hide will not help. This is the second element. One is the customer value proposition. The second one is on the way you communicate. The third one is ensure that you are managing in terms of leadership, that you have the right people on board, that these people have the right tools, that these people have the right training, that these people have the right development plan that will help them to grow and to continue. And it's your role to ensure that this is happening. Even if there is 2 people in this organization, or there is 10 people, or there is 50 people in the organization. The third role, it's about ensuring that you have the right performance metrics in place. So these are the performance. I have to specify what I expect. Even if it's 1 or 2 projects that I want you to deliver, each person needs to have clear responsibilities and need to have 1 or 2 projects that they have to deliver. It's your role again to clarify those, to make sure that these are measurable, that these are specific, that these are stretchy, but at the same time realistic, to make sure that they align with what you want to do overall. This is your role to specify these KPI. It's also your role to track these KPI. It's also your role to compensate the person accordingly if they have done good, excellent, or average in terms of this role. It is part of the performance metrics. The other part is you need to make sure that the structure is here to support. If you want, the structure means the organization structure, it means your policy and procedures. Depending on what you want to do, you have to shape this, align with what are the specifications that you have in terms of your customer value proposition. And the last one, it's about the culture. Understanding the culture. If the culture needs to change, it's a big process. You need to know who are the stakeholders. You need to know how to get them on board. You need to create the burning platform. You need to have the right SWAT team around you. You need to ensure that you have low-hanging fruits, that you could show success behind it so as to attract the other followers to go by. So all these elements are the 6 dimensions of becoming a leader, a good leader, that helps you align your people to your strategy. And if you have this alignment, your chances of implementing your strategy are much stronger. And it's something that is ongoing. So all this is more food for thoughts. It is templates that you could use or not use. You have to decide what makes sense for your organization and what doesn't make sense for your organization. But at the same time, what you need, and you need to decide when is the right time to use them. Okay? So now there are other slides behind, but I don't want to waste your time. Any questions on what we have covered today? No questions on what we've covered today? Very good. I know it's Friday afternoon, so have a great weekend and look forward to catching up with a number of you on a one-to-one basis. Thank you.